Hi everyone, it's Nicole here today for Mama Elephant with a trio of scene cards featuring the Favor Bag Chickie add-on as well as the little Chickie agenda stamps and dies paired together to create these adorable little, can be springtime or, as I'm doing today, anytime type of scene cards. I'm even going to do a little no-line coloring with Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers for the little Chickie agenda images. Let's start by building our backgrounds. I've got some smooth white cardstock trimmed to A2 size, 4¼ by 5½ inches. And I'm going to ink up my backgrounds with a cloud design using a cloud stencil and peacock feathers distress ink. And we're going to do this almost all the way to the bottom. I'm going to say leaving about an inch or so without any stenciling. This is going to be covered up with a grassy border, so we don't need anything at the bottom of our background. This is going to provide that great little element to help build the scenes today. Next, I've got some cilantro cardstock from Lawn Fawn, and I'm going to die cut my grassy borders from this, one border per card. This is the Grassy Trio dies from Mama Elephant. And then we will take some Mowed Lawn Distress ink and ink up the edges of the grass as well to give it a little bit more depth and dimension. I love the way the Mowed Lawn Distress ink works with this limey green cardstock. Most of the die cut elements that I'm using today will have some sort of ink embellishment on them to add that depth and dimension. After I have my grass here, I'm going to make sure my work surface is clean so I don't transfer that ink. And there's what our background scene is going to look like. This grass border will provide the perfect little place to tuck our Chickie and to hide the bottom of that element. I also have an egg die cut here. This was created with some brand new dies from Mama Elephant for the February 2019 release. So this is another new product. This is the oval scallop frames, the smallest in that collection. And then there's the little zigzag back and forth, which you can cut it in half to make it look like a cracked egg, which is going to work great. I inked up the edges with Peacock Feathers Distress ink and then splattered it with Picket Fence paint, and I'm setting that aside to dry. For the Chickie itself, I inked up the edges with Mustard Seed Distress ink, and then I'm taking a sponge dauber and Spun Sugar Distress ink and adding pink cheeks to each of these little Chickies. For my first Chickie, in the Chickie set, I die cut the Chickie itself again from this time ivory cardstock, and then it has a zigzag back and forth design that I die cut twice from that Chickie design and glued the top and bottom to it so it looks like it's cracking out of an egg itself. Then I added the oval shaped eyes to this first one, the little beak, and then we're going to tuck this into our card design. The sentiment on this, I did some of them off camera. I will show you stamping these on camera as well. All my sentiments today are simple little phrases from the Hello Friend Wishes stamp set, stamped with a clear embossing ink and heat set with white embossing powder to really show up against that green cardstock. We've got the little wings for each Chickie. I really liked positioning mine today so that they appear to be holding the cracked egg and then all these other little Chickies are out and about around it. So almost, I think all of them are going to feature kind of that central design. I also took Spiced Marmalade Distress ink and inked up the edges of the wings to give those a little bit more definition. And there's what that's going to kind of look like. The images from the Little Chickie agenda were stamped on Bristol smooth cardstock with antique linen distress ink. This is a great ink if you want to do some no-line coloring. I have not done no-line coloring before with zig markers, but I wanted to give it a try, and I absolutely love the results. The antique linen is going to be light enough that it blends into the background, and it's water-based, so it'll kind of react with the markers since these are water-based as well, and you aren't going to be left with a harsh brown line. The colors of zig markers I'm using are shown across the top of the screen. For this, I'm using some yellows for my chickies with bright yellow, yellow, and pale yellow. For the legs, I used mid-brown to trace those and make those stand out. And then the eggshells here are light blue and haze blue. And once I have these colored in, I did go back with my light blue and add some little dots to make speckled eggs, really to resemble that egg we created with the oval scallop die. It works really well. But I think the no-line coloring really worked for these cute little chickies. They ended up being super adorable, and I really liked the look. So I'm going to definitely be trying this no-line coloring effect with more images and the zig markers. Added a little pink haze for the cheeks on each of my chickies, and then I die cut them first. And when I have them die cut, because I don't like to run them through the die cutting machine after I've added black glaze pen for the eyes, I think it flattens it. So I'm going to die cut them first, and then I will take a black glaze pen and make sure that their eyes really stand out. I do this anyway, but it's really important in a no-line coloring image because you've lost the detail of that face. So here are my little chickies. How cute are they? They're going to complement this big chickie perfectly. So we're going to start gluing it all in place now. I'm going to have this little chickie coming up out of this egg. Here's that black glaze pen for the eyes, and once I add that, their whole little face comes to life, I think. Glossy accents for the beaks and the eyes on all of my Favor Bag Chickie die cut images. That helps make their faces really stand out as well. I added little white dots to the cheeks. And then each of the Chickie cards features one Chickie up on top of the big one and then a couple down below. So 4 total if you count the die cut one and then our stamped and colored little Chickie images. So super cute. I love these little guys. I think they are a fantastic springtime addition to the little agenda collection from Mama Elephant. I'm even going to add a die cut heart. I just grabbed any Mama Elephant die collection. This is the pocket envelope this heart came from, if you want to know exactly which one. But anything that has a little heart should do, and added a little touch of red down at the bottom. Then I decided there's an awful lot of cream or ivory from the eggshell on this chickie. The other 2 cards don't have that. And I felt like it needed something else, a little pop of color to add to the top of this chickie's head. And I don't know, for whatever reason, I have really, really been loving adding little dimensional bows to my critter projects lately, whether it be critter-shaped card or whatever. And so I went through my Mama Elephant dies and grabbed the Dainty bow. It's a small bow that you assemble. There's 2 pieces to it. And I'm going to die cut that from a pink cardstock and then use my fingers to round it out so that I can fold it and assemble it really easily. And we are going to adorn the top of that eggshell with a little Dainty bow, which really brings a pop of color and rounds out this little chickie design perfectly. I'm using my tweezers to assemble this. So that's the main part of the bow, and then we've got the bow tails that I'm going to add a dab of glue, and I'm going to use my tweezers again to pinch this together. I just use these tweezers throughout the assembly process to help hold it together until the glue dries. So once we have that, we can wrap that little straight edge around, secure it to the back of the bow, and then pop that onto the Chickie's head. Here's a look at another card I already created. I'm going to share the process for this one here in a minute too, but I love the glasses from the Favor Bag Chickie die collection. I think it makes this little guy look like Chicken Little, which I think is really fun. And we're going to create that card on camera as well here in just a second. So I'm wrapping this bow around, and you can see I'm just securing it with my glue, pinching it shut, and I'm going to remove as much of that excess glue. It looks like I got a little too much there. And again, using the tweezers, pinching that shut, and then I will take my glue and glue this to the top of the eggshell. And I'm even going to hold that in place with my tweezers too. So a cute little dimensional bow to adorn the top of my card. I'm going to flip my panel over once everything is dry and trim off any excess, that little eggshell that's hanging off, and my grass was a little bit long as well. And the glossy accents has dried on the nose, so I'm going to go back in and add a highlight there. I like doing it on top. I think it shows up better. It gets lost if you do it underneath the glossy accents sometimes. In fact, I already did the eyes, and I think I probably should have gone back over the eyes with the white pen after that glossy accents is all the way dry. So there is one background panel done. This was so much fun that I wanted to go ahead and create more than one card with this same design and just play with the different little Chickie agenda images, as well as building different Favor Bag Chickie little critters, because you can do lots of different things with the exact same dies. So again, we have another background here, another cloud background. We have our Grassy trio border inked with Mowed Lawn Distress ink. And this time we've got our little Chicken Little guy. He's already been inked with mustard seed around the edges and spun sugar for the cheeks. And we're going to tuck him into the grass. I've got my eggshell with the peacock feathers distress ink along the edges. We will again splatter this with picket fence distress paint. I did this in a box so I didn't splatter paint everywhere, but it makes little speckled eggs. And then I didn't quite get that where I wanted it to go. I like tipping them a little bit at an angle. I think it's a little bit of a fun effect. I die cut the glasses 3 times from a red cardstock, and I'm going to stack them one on top of another to make them a little bit more prominent and not quite so flat. So once I have them glued one to the other, I'm going to put something heavy on top to really mash those layers together. In this case, I always use acrylic blocks because they're handy and I always have them around on my work desk. Want to make sure that there's no excess glue sticking out. And then I'm going to put those acrylic blocks on top. I've got my eggs here. Again, I really liked tucking one of the eggshells back behind the chicken, so you just kind of get a peek of that, and then the the little Chickie is holding the other one. And we'll glue those glasses right to his face. And then I've got 3 little Chickies that we will stamp and color for him as well. Now I'm going to add the little red tuft at the top of his head. We've got the beak pieces, and I accidentally dropped that one upside down. Luckily I was able to grab it before it secured. But I like that there are 2 different beak pieces. So on 2 of my cards, I created the face like this, and then on the last one, I just used 1 piece. You can do that however you want to do, whatever critter's face that you want to create. I love, again, as I mentioned, that there's lots of options with this, that you can build these Favor Bag add-on dies in many different ways and combine them in many different ways to create different critters. So once I kind of have the basics down for my chicken, I'm ready to stamp these images on Bristol Smooth cardstock. Again, I'm using Antique Linen Distress ink. And I'm going to show you here just placing them in my MISTI. I used the MISTI because I inked and stamped them at least twice so that I'd get a good outline that I could really see. You can see the first time it's pretty light. So I stamped those twice. I have a great outline to work from now, and I'm going to start coloring these in with my Zig markers, starting with that bright yellow color to trace and add. As my darkest color, we're going to pull that color out, blend the edges and soften that a bit with the yellow, and then finish with pale yellow. And that just will pull the rest of that color out, finish it nicely. We'll go back in with bright yellow for the beak. And mid-brown for all the legs, pink haze for the cheeks on each of the chickies. And I love these have such a nice little fine tip. You are able to trace the legs very easily. You could also use a black fine tip pen if you wanted to for these kind of details. So I'm going to do the same thing for the remaining chickies. Bright yellow, yellow, and pale yellow. The pale yellow is used in the majority, and it just kind of pulls out the rest of those darker colors and blends it all out. Little pink cheeks, so that coordinates back to our Favor Bag die cut that we've also inked with pink cheeks. The mid-brown marker makes the legs stand out. Blending out with all of our yellow marker here. I like the bright yellow around the edges. I think it definitely gives a little definition. And then our lighter yellows blend it all out perfectly. Now for the envelope here, I'm going to use red for the little heart and a light blue to trace the envelope shape to give it a little more definition. And that's it. I didn't actually color the rest of the envelope in. The light blue marker is going to work great to just trace that. So I again die cut my images first, then I will take a black pen and add detail to the eyes, so that doesn't flatten out when I run it through the die cutting machine. And then we're ready to glue these cute little guys in place on our card. So let's grab our background now. And I'm going to tuck this eggshell kind of back behind the grass. The last one I did in front, this one I'm going to do back behind. And instead of having a chickie inside this one, it's going to be kind of down in front. I played around with the placement a lot on these cards to make them all just a little bit different, but yet still similar. We're going to have this chickie holding the egg. As I mentioned, you can do lots of different styles of their wings where you want to place them. My favorite tends to be having them hold this broken, cracked egg for whatever reason. It just worked with the design of this card. Here we're going to tuck this little guy back behind the grass. We have one kind of popping up out of the other eggshell there. Looks like I forgot to add some ink to my wings, so I'm going to do that really quick. And then we will take the Hello Friend Wishes stamp set. This is a greeting stamp set. And we are going to stamp, I just wanted to say hello to help brighten your day along the bottom edge of the card. And we're going to stamp that with an embossing ink and heat emboss with white embossing powder. I really wanted to keep away from black ink for my design, and I thought the white complemented this better. It really pops off of the green along the bottom edge of the card and picks up any white accents from the rest of the design. I'm going to put this in my MISTI to help line it up perfectly, using those grid lines to make sure that I have it lined up. I'm going to use a powder tool to help deactivate the rest of the cardstock, so we hopefully don't get any stray embossing flakes. If you do, I always like to take a dry paintbrush and brush those away before heat setting, sprinkling on our white embossing powder, and then making sure our heat tool is really good and hot before we bring it to our paper. That's just going to help reduce warping. You can see it tried to curl up a little bit on me anyway. I ended up putting a little bit more glue along that top edge and then laying a heavy acrylic block on top to hold that flat, because it really just kind of wanted to curl up on me a little bit. For whatever reason, this was the only background that did that. The others did not. Finishing details now, just like we did on the last card, we want to add some glossy accents to the eyes and to the beak. I love how this draws attention to the cute little face. White pin detail, I did not do a ton. I did add little white dots to cheeks, both on the little Agenda Chickie stamped images and the Favor Bag Chickie images. So cute. I love these cute little critters. I just think they are so much fun. And then we will place this on a white top fold card base to finish off the second design. Here are the images from my third card. I won't share putting this one together. It's very much the same. We're just going to use a little bit different Chickie image. It's very similar. We're not going to use glasses. We're going to use the oval eyes again, both beak pieces. We're going to adorn the top of the head with a little pink bow for fun, kind of like we did on the eggshell card. And then I'm using 3 different images from the little Chickie agenda. These all feature paint buckets or paintbrush. So I tried to kind of pick ones that went together. And one has a paint bucket on its head, one is holding a paintbrush, and one is carrying a paint bucket. A couple of additional colors were needed for this. In addition to mid-brown, I used beige for the paintbrush. I also used gray and pale gray for the gray accents for the gray buckets, but otherwise all of the rest of the colors are exactly the same, with our bright yellow, yellow, and pale yellow. I will die cut these, add the black pin to the eyes, and then glue those to our card base. This card you could use any sentiment you wanted to. Simply by changing up what sentiment you use. These could all be Easter cards. They could all be birthday cards or hello cards. This one ended up being a miss you card, friend cards. Really, the sky is the limit. Anything works with these. I tried to keep them generic enough so that you could use whatever your favorite greeting is for the design. I picked greetings all from one stamp set to simplify, but you could definitely go through your stamps and greeting stamp sets and pick all kinds of different greetings for these cards. Make up a whole bunch of backgrounds, kind of like I did, and stamp them with all kinds of greetings for whatever style of cards you need. So here is my final card. You can see the little Chickie. I used the little red tuft. It's got a cracked egg as well. We've got our little stamped and colored little Chickie agenda images. We have our stamped and embossed sentiment, and our glossy accents for everything. And I had to reapply the glossy accents to the beak because I accidentally dragged my hand through it. I think it's good to stay real there. It happens all the time. I probably should have waited till I was done, but I'm always so super eager to get that glossy accents drying that I tend to put it on right away, and sometimes I get my hand in it. Thank goodness it didn't ruin the whole card. And just like the Chickie with the eggshell, I felt like this one needed a little pop of color, a little something else, and that dainty bow was the perfect finishing touch for that. Here's a look at all 3 of the cards I made with the Favor Bag Chickie and Little Chickie Agenda stamps and dies. The supplies I used to create my cards are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more cards featuring Mama Elephant stamps and dies from the February 2019 release that you might be interested in. Thank you guys so much for joining me today, and we'll catch you next time.